All right. Hey, today we're going to do the Law of Conservation of Mass Lab together. In order to be ready for this, you need to have already printed a copy of the lab handout, which is available on our website. In addition to that, you also need to have watched the screencast, which is the instructions on how to carry out and also, importantly, how to write up the lab. So having done this, we're just going to jump in and get started. So starting with procedure step 1, we need to get a sample of sodium carbonate. In order to do that, we're going to dispense 10 milliliters of this sodium carbonate solution into a graduated cylinder. And then, as it says in the instructions, we will then transfer that 10 milliliter sample into a small Erlenmeyer flask. So now we have our sample of sodium carbonate. The next two steps then are getting small samples of two other solutions. The next one is a calcium chloride solution, but because we only need 3 milliliters of this, we have to dispense this 1 milliliter at a time. In order to do that, we'll dispense this into a small test tube, which we first of all, as it says in the instructions, will label as calcium chloride. And then at this point, we will get the sample 1 milliliter at a time. In order to do that, we will draw the bulb full. We will drop this below 1 milliliter, allow that to draw up into the dropper, and we will dispense that milliliter of solution. And then we'll just repeat that 2 more times. Oops. That was under the level of the solution when I let go. All right, here's our 2nd milliliter of calcium chloride solution. And then we need to draw up our 3rd milliliter of calcium chloride solution. Okay, so now we've got the 3 milliliters of calcium chloride that we need. To cut down on clutter, we'll get rid of these 2 bottles. Now the last thing that we need to get a sample of is actually sulfuric acid. This we're going to certainly be careful with. So following step number 3, we will label that test tube H2SO4 or sulfuric acid, and we will draw up 3 milliliters of this, similar to the way that we did the calcium chloride. There's 1 milliliter. And again, we'll do that 2 more times as well. There's our 2nd milliliter. And then finally, our 3rd and last milliliter of sulfuric acid. Okay, so having done that, we're now done with the first 3 steps of the lab. And basically what we've done is we've gathered up all the chemicals that we need. Now moving into step number 4, this is the first time that we're going to weigh all 4 of these pieces of glassware. Need to turn on the power. And turn on the balance. Just not plugged in. Plug was shorted out. Okay. All right. So now that we've got things plugged in, the balance is powering on and recalibrating itself. And at this point, as it mentions in step number 4, we're going to re-zero, and then we are going to weigh all 4 pieces of glassware. Please be sure, as it says in step 4, to record this mass in your quantitative data. Now at this point, we're going to start doing the chemistry of the lab. So as it says in step number 5, we're going to pour the contents of the calcium chloride test tube, making sure that I get the correct test tube. Yep. Okay, so making sure that we have the calcium chloride test tube, we are going to pour this into the sodium carbonate test tube. Then, as it says, we're going to swirl and then record our observations. So, is that a good angle? Mm-hmm. So as we pour these together, and then swirl. You'll notice that we end up with a white solid that is formed from that chemical reaction. At this point then, take a second, pause the video if you need, and write down any qualitative observations under step 5 there in the data chart. And the thing that you're looking for, as you learned in the introduction, is that we're looking for evidence of a chemical change. Now at this point, we're going to come back to the balance. We are now in step 6, and we're going to re-zero, and we're going to weigh these again. Notice that we're weighing all 4 pieces of glassware, and be sure to record that piece of data. Now we're going to remove these from the balance, and we are going to carry out step 7, where we're going to pour the sulfuric acid into the mixture that was created in the previous step. Now again, we're looking for evidence of a chemical reaction, but we're going to have to watch carefully as we do this. Is this okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we swirl. And the hope is that you were able to identify the evidence there of that chemical reaction. Please make note of that in the qualitative data under step 7. And now all we need to do is carry out step 8, where we weigh everything again. So coming back again, we'll re-zero the balance. We will place these items on the balance, and we will weigh them one more time. This mass then is the mass that you will record as your final quantitative piece of data. And at this point, step 8, everything goes down the drain and you're all set. Flipping the lab over then, you'll notice that there are 2 calculations to do. Please don't guess at how to do these. The description of how to do these calculations is very clearly laid out in the screencast that you should have already watched. And then you'll answer these conclusion questions, and this lab is not due until after the quarter break, and so it's due for second quarter. So thank you, and yeah, good luck writing up the rest of the lab.